Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Rusted Compass. I'm your host, Will Finch, and today we got a lot of things to talk about. Um, it's been kind of a crazy, hectic week with moving and getting everything down here and trying to find a spot and just getting everything going. A little bit of a stressful thing. But one thing I've encountered is a lot of self-talk, a lot of people that aren't so kind. And I mean, like, people like just out, like having outbursts and things like that. I was driving the other day and didn't cut anybody off. I'm pretty positive of that, but the dude was doing probably 25 over the speed limit. And then decided to pull up next to me and start cussing me out because he had to slow down. And in that moment, I was like, excuse me? Uh, the internal part of me wanted to say, yeah, let's pull over, buddy. Let's talk about this. And that would have not been good for any one of us. But I'm glad we didn't do that. But I was like, dude, look at yourself. Like, you're flipping out over nothing. Calm down. And, we went about our day. But I was also in the midst of my own little internal crisis, like trying to figure out where I was living, how I was going to get some money to pay for the place. Just all kinds of things. I was having a bad day that day too. And then of course that person just decided to try to make it worse, and I chose not to engage in that. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. Yeah, just interesting. But today we're going to talk about how to kind of deal with stuff like that, reacting versus responding. It's funny that topic kind of comes up because it was a topic at my sheepdog course that I went to that just ironically just makes sense at the moment. So, so might as well talk about it. But yeah, just a quick update though, before we dive too deep into that. My bad for not getting this out yesterday. I had an ocular migraine. If you don't know what that is, it's a migraine, but I get like my vision. It's like I'm looking through a kaleidoscope, so it makes it really hard to do things. And I mean, it's cool because I get to see like a kaleidoscope all day, but it makes it really inconvenient for doing anything. So I laid down, took a day off, rested, trying to get that figured out. Woke up this morning dehydrated with a headache. Went and got a coffee. Um, getting everything going, trying to play catch up. That it's pretty stressful. So that's going to be another talking point at this episode is stress management. Dealing with things in a good coping way. Oftentimes we don't necessarily have the best coping mechanisms, but you can always change that. So with dealing with stress, you guys already know me. I like going to the gym. I like going on walks. I like to go listen to music, just chill out, get away from whatever I'm doing, whatever's stressing me out, and dealing with that kind of thing. So that's one thing that I do. And we'll walk you guys through that and we'll talk about it. So, but yeah, other than that, we're going to talk about that internal voice in your head as being the biggest critic of whatever you're doing, and where that kind of derives from, and maybe ways to kind of deal with that. Different ways to deal with that. Oh, some corgis. So I've actually found a nice place here in a nice quiet RV place that is so kind to let me stay here for a little bit. So it's been pretty good for me. Really good price, really quiet, which is funny because I'm not the quietest person. So maybe it's a good balance. It helps me maintain that quietness. So yeah, so let's talk about that voice in our head. That one that likes to tell us that we're not the greatest, you can't do that, or maybe yours tells you, yeah, you go for it, or do this, or do that, or whatever. Let's talk about how to deal with that and how to manage that, right? Because I don't think any of us are not going to get rid of that thing. But it can be managed in a way that could be a very positive thing. you look at it as a critic, or, I'm an artist of all kinds of things. I just like to create things. So we all get that perfectionism mentality where we need to have it perfect before it gets put out to the world. Well, sometimes it doesn't need to be perfect. Maybe it is perfect already and it's light, and it just needs to be shown. Uh, a lot of things is, kind of in that authentic realm of what to kind of expect, or, molding into an environment or whatever the case may be, right? But as long as you can maintain well, as long as you can maintain and understand your true authentic self, you won't have to deal with that internal voice as much, at least in my experience. Because when you're doing your own thing and you're being authentic, and you care, but you don't care what other people think, if that makes sense, and you're just being your true self, then that internal voice goes away. Because oftentimes that internal voice comes from grooming from your childhood, or outside voices like friends, your friend circles, your friend groups, whatever you want to call them. Like, all their opinions and stuff come inside your head and start to confuse you, and it usually happens to those that have, at least in my experience, they lack confidence in their own decision making. I personally have been a really good decision maker, but lacked the confidence, and always reached out to somebody else to help me make that decision, because it's not that I was afraid to choose the wrong one. It's just I just confused myself and didn't quite understand which was the right one. I don't know. It's kind of hard to understand, but it's just one of those things, you just got to find that internal voice and figure out where that root comes from, and then dig it up like a plant. You know, you can reroute, re-navigate, redo anything. Nothing's ever set in stone. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy, but we've got a nice little plane over us, flying probably about 2,000 feet. I don't know, it might be less, but anyway, the but you can absolutely find where those seeds were planted, and tear the roots up. You don't have to have that self doubt. Um, you know, I had to find mine uh, through a very lonely path. Um, and that's what it is. It's a very secluded path. I didn't have a lot of support right by my side. I'm sure I had a lot of support somewhere. I just couldn't see it, or maybe I still don't see it. But I've had to go down this road on my own path to figure that out, and figure out where those seeds come from, and just get rid of them. Because at the end of the day, if you're okay with it, then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, to be honest. It just doesn't. Uh, sure, you got to look at things from, like, sometimes a business aspect, if that's the route you go with it. You got to, I don't want to say people please, but you do have to cater a little bit to what others might need or want. But that's if you're doing custom products type stuff. I do a lot of my own product stuff, and I just create whatever I want. You like it, you don't buy it. You want to criticize it, go for it. Thank you. I love the comments, type stuff. So it's like, by all means, just, you got to find that internal root, and see where that actually coming from before you can actually try to manage it. That's my best advice to that. Because sometimes, man, you can turn that. Okay, so one thing is, I took that voice that says no, I can't do it, and I kind of played a game with it, right? It's kind of weird if you think about it, but maybe it's not. I basically, it would tell me I couldn't, and I would use that as fire or gasoline to put on my fire of things I can do. Like, well, you can't do this, and I just keep going forward. I keep going forward, and I use that to push me forward. And I know that not everybody can do that. Well, everybody can do that. Not everybody chooses to do that, I should say. But you got to find that inner strength to be able to do stuff like that, or even just use it in a way that helps you get to your, or I guess helps accomplish your goals, right? So don't let it sit, try not to let it burden you or weigh you down, because that will drag you down ultimately. And that starts a nasty little cycle that you don't want to get into. But you got to be able to recognize that too. And how do you do that? Well, you have to be self-conscious. So you got to be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And really, it just takes a little bit of reflection. You can sit here for 5-10 minutes a day, in the morning or in the evening, whichever works best for you. You got to figure out kind of where your brain operates the best at and utilize that timeline for the greatest work to get the most important stuff done. At least that's what I figured out in my stuff. So I get a lot of stuff done at night. I don't get a whole lot done in the morning. Well, I take that back. I don't get stuff done in the middle of the day. If I wake up early and I start early, I can get stuff done. My middle of the day, not so much. Evening, I get a lot more stuff done too. So I got to work in those two time frames and to get all my important stuff done. But back to what I was saying, I got a little off sidetrack there, or I got sidetracked there, not off sidetrack, because that would put me right back on, right? I don't know. Anyway, what you got to do is become self-conscious. So figure out what makes you tick. What gets you pushed forward. And use that to your advantage. It's okay if people disagree or don't like you or whatever the case, because that's always going to be the case. Use that to push you forward and not drag you down. Don't let that intruding thought poison your mind. You got to obtain mental clarity. And, I oftentimes do that when I'm getting stressed about something. I have a lot of issues with my computer and all this other stuff, which is kind of funny because I kind of had a background once in computers, so it makes it even worse. See, there's the internal thing. But it doesn't really make it worse. It's just a problem I haven't been able to fix yet. But the thing is, you got to find your method of dealing with those things. And, what I've found a lot of times is get outside, go on a walk, go to the gym, go do one of your hobbies for a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be those things. Those are just my things. A lot of times, I don't have it now because my living situation, but my motorcycle, which I miss dearly, and that's my number one coping mechanism for anything, is I just go on a ride. It clears my mind 100%. That's my rock. My one thing in life I just absolutely love. And eventually I'm going to get to the point where I can have a solid foundation and I can just bounce out on the motorcycle and I'll be out for like a month or two just on the motorcycle. That's the goal. And making these in different locations and areas and stuff like that. So it'd be fun, and sharing my wisdom with everyone, because my life lessons have taught me a lot of things, and I'm more than willing to share it with everybody. So, and maybe it'll help somebody, because I am a veteran also. So I deal with all the veteran stuff that most of the veterans all deal with as well. So I've had to figure out a way to live with all that stuff, because you're not going to get rid of it. It's part of you now, and that's okay. But it doesn't have to be a bad part of you. It just has to be a part. And you got to identify those things, whether, you were in a tragic incident or just dealing with shitty people, narcissists. I've dealt with narcissists. It's just been bad. Like, yeah, we'll get into that in a different, maybe next week we'll talk about that. But this week we're going to talk about dealing with the stress and stuff, because that's pretty heavy on my mind right now. And I think I've been dealing with this stress pretty well, especially not knowing what's next exactly. I just keep building. I haven't had time to, I haven't made time to sit down and balance it all out and get all that good stuff figured out. I just keep moving forward, and I have faith in what I'm doing, and it will get me to where I need. But I just got to figure out and balance that in a little way. But my next thing is dealing with those people, right? Um, in reacting versus or responding versus reacting. Basically, I want to touch on that because reacting is going to be more of your subconscious that you've already been trained to do, and you may not know you've been trained to do it. You know, you lash out or you do this or that, or you got to figure that out, why you're doing that. Because if you don't know that, then you're not going to be able to stop, pause, and respond. Um, Somebody may be yelling at you, and me, my natural instinct is to lash back. In some instances, that might be uh, a necessary thing, but I've also been in scenarios like I was just telling you about narcissist stuff that people intentionally provoke that sometimes, and you got to be able to identify a lot of that stuff. So it gets a whole lot deeper, but at the same time, it doesn't. But you got to take a second, pause, and relax before you respond. Don't react because maybe they're just doing it intentionally or trying to provoke you to get into their games or whatever the case may be, right? And oftentimes, if you can just pause, even stay silent, who cares? You know, you don't say anything, they got nothing to react about, and it probably have more of a adverse effect on them, to be honest. I know I've been silent treatment a lot before, and that bothered me when I guess communication would have been nice, but at the same time, I wasn't accepting the communication that they were having. So I guess, it's just figuring all that stuff out. But, we all deal with people that say, you're walking down the street and they bump into you and say, watch out, or whatever. That's their bad day, man. Don't let that into your own mind and, let that bother you. Just say, hey, my bad. Whether it's your bad or not, doesn't matter. Just let it go, you know, because if you keep carrying that throughout the day, it's just going to keep weighing on you. And the next thing's going to happen is going to weigh on you. And then at the end of the day, you're just going to break until, something bad happens. Oftentimes, that could be just a bad decision, a bad choice, whatever the case is, however you want to mask it, really. But yeah, I mean, that's basically, you gotta figure these things out. Um, and I'd really like to hear how you guys deal with some of this stuff, because not only does that help you speak it, that also helps me kind of, I don't want to say compare it, but maybe add it to my toolbox if it's something different, because I think I do pretty well. I'm pretty calm in today's age, I guess, whatever that means. But I've become very calm, very quiet, not because I'm shy or any of that other stuff. It's just, I'm just observing, mostly just kind of, not necessarily absorbing, but just kind of observing um, the scenario before I even make a response or a reaction, whatever the case. Sometimes I just let a lot of things be. Sometimes I let things be that shouldn't be. And that's another thing that you need to find, that you have to have that boundary. I think otherwise, just things are just going to keep happening to you. They may not be they're not in your control by no means. But once you set that solid boundary, I think whatever that boundary may be, whenever you set it, you got to stick to it. And just got to accept the fact that you're going to probably lose some people when you do that, especially when you set healthy boundaries in toxic situations. You got to be able to let friends go. You got to let people leave, come and leave as they please, But at the same time, set the boundary and adhere to it, It's going to probably, it seems like the more I put all this stuff to work in my own life, the smaller my circle gets, but the more solid it is. Um, so that's always a good thing, and we'll just see where it all goes. But you just gotta have faith, whether you believe in a higher power or not. But you could just be a spiritual person, which that's okay too. But or just not it, I guess. You could just also not be a religious person whatsoever either, and that's okay. I'm not really. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a religious person, but I am. I do believe in a higher power and God and all that good stuff. I personally would think it'd be silly if I didn't, because I had plenty of things in life to show me otherwise. That there is something greater out there. But yeah, I just want to talk to you guys on some of those points, and I don't know if any of that really made sense, because sometimes I just feel like I'm talking in circles. But to give you my perspective on things, like you got to realize, like, some of the encounters you have in life are 100% somebody else's dealings. Um, if you're in a good mood, stay in the good mood. It's your choice. Just because somebody else encounters you and they're not in a good mood, or they try to interact or disrupt or whatever the case, you got to stay grounded and balanced. And I think that's the main point of today is finding your grounding and your balance, and maintaining that at all costs. Um, so, yeah, I just want to leave that with you guys, and hope everyone has a great week, and a lot of good things are coming forward. I got some products coming out here soon, if you guys don't know, but it's coming. First of the year, I'll broadcast a lot of it, and I'll show you guys what I've been working on. So we're getting there. And then also I've been doing a lot of photography. Pretty cool. Orlando's great. A lot of cool things. Super clean city also. That's one thing I noticed too. Really clean. It's amazing, really. Love it. For being a big city, super clean. You don't really get that in a lot of big cities. So that's pretty interesting. That kudos to Orlando. You guys have done a great job doing that. But yeah, just trying to get my photography, my videography, and maybe some graphic design stuff going, along with my audio stuff. I just did my first DJ gig here in Orlando. I think it went okay. You can tell the last song, which I was going back and forth between my computer and my thumb drive, so it probably got confused and froze. So, but it was the last song right at 11, so it didn't really bother me too bad. It was just still internally embarrassing. That goes back to that internal voice. I don't think anybody else really noticed, because at that exact moment, the venue, did the old classic club thing and turned on the lights. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that wasn't so bad. So, but anyway, I just want to leave all that with you guys, and yeah, find your grounding and your balance, and maintain it. I did hear one time, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast actually. I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war. And I don't know why, but that, as a veteran, really resonated with me. And I know it does with a lot of you guys if you've never heard that before. But, I'd rather be living in peace, but stay ready as the warrior. Because we all do know that, as veterans anyway, we've been trained extensively, whether you think you were or not. It doesn't matter what job you had. You were trained extensively in some psychological things that you don't realize it. But it's always there. Those skills, yeah, some of them diminish, like your accuracy and all that, and shooting and stuff like that. But all your reaction type stuff, you were trained to react a certain way, and you will react that way. But in civilian life, you don't need to react that way. So you got to find that guard and you stay in that peace. But when chaos does hit the fan, and sometimes it does, you need to be able to rechannel that that knowledge and stuff. So I really like that. Be a warrior in a garden and not a gardener at war. So you're already equipped with the skills. You just got to learn how to balance them and maintain some grounding. So, and yeah, if you guys need help with that, man, reach out. I love talking to people. So I'll share my wisdom, of course. So I want to leave you guys with that. Grounding and balance. Love you guys. See you guys soon. Thanks again for watching my show. And I'm Will. And welcome to the Rustic Compass.